brothers ambushed by a manimal monster they thought was only a legend.
He could have ripped the dog and me and my brother all apart.
I felt like I was going to die. I thought he was just going to run over the top of me and kill me, and that'd be the end of it.
A race of lizard creatures living under the streets of L.A.
They're coming up out of this drain, circling around like sharks.
And I looked right in the same area. I saw 2 or 3 different things that looked like little shadows crawling.
Up through the drains, into the walls, a family's own home, invaded.
I was staring it in the eyes. It looked vicious. It looked really vicious.
Within the state of Tennessee, the mountainous region along its eastern border is like a world unto itself. This is Appalachia, where smoky haze often blankets these mountains. It's a place where wildlife still roams free. A region where small communities of hill people cling to long-held traditions.
There are several areas in East Tennessee where people stay away from because they're afraid to go into a particular place. Either they've heard a story or they've encountered something themselves that they simply can't explain.
Prominent among those beliefs is a steadfast conviction about a mysterious creature, somehow both animal and man, a beast that's been whispered about for generations.
My dad once told me when I was young that if you hunt these mountains long enough, that you will see strange things and you will see some things you probably shouldn't see.
Its reputation in these hills is pervasive. Countless sightings, terrifying encounters.
Many of the reports I've gathered over the years, the people were so frightened. You could hear it in their voice would shake, their voice would tremble. They would look at you with this fear in their eyes like, tell me, what is this?
What this is has been debated at least as far back as the late 1800s.
In 1878, there was an article in the Knoxville Daily Tribune. There was a doctor by the name of O.G. Broiler that had supposedly in his possession a captured Tennessee wildman.
Did you see the wildman hunt?
An exhibition was arranged where the assembled viewed a creature, the likes of which they never imagined.
My good lady, and welcome. I know you're familiar with the legend of the Tennessee wildman. After a year of studying, researching, investigating, tonight in this tent, I am going to prove to you that the legend is in fact true. Gentlemen, my good lady, behold, the Tennessee wildman. Get right, he's chained down, he can't hurt you.
For the longest time, the Tennessee wildman has existed in rumor and legend. But for 2 brothers, it would become something very, very real.
It was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. I thought we were going to die.
Just west of Knoxville, Tennessee, the small town of Rockwood sits secluded along the foothills of the Appalachians. Dr. Frank Epperson, a pastor, and Mark Epperson, a welder, are brothers 10 years apart. Their family moved from the city to Rockwood when the younger son, Mark, entered high school. That's when their mother began warning them about the woods.
Mom was a Cherokee Indian, and she used to speak of such things as the Tennessee wildman.
My mother had warned both my brother and myself to stay out of the woods because there was a wild man that was dangerous, very dangerous.
One night in December 1981, after a long day's work, the Epperson brothers were at their mother's mountain cabin, settling in for Sunday supper.
Hope you boys are hungry.
It looks delicious, Mom. It smells delicious, Mom.
So what about those dogs? Joe's dogs?
Lately, the hills were filled with talk of a predator on the loose.
Somewhere in the time frame of December 1981, there were a rash of reports that animals were missing.
Just up and disappeared from the yard.
Well, whatever it was big. It was loud. It was as big as a bear.
Things moving around in the yard, trash being turned over. We did not expect this type of activity. And then all of a sudden, these things start happening.
What is that? Oh, he's barking at something.
Somewhere around 7 o'clock, we heard something outside of the house. And it was It was a noise like something had fallen over.
There was a dog that we had, and he began barking. It was a bark that I never heard from him before. He wanted to hide, and that was not our dog.
He's barking at something.
I'm gonna check it out.
Oh, now, I'm coming with you.
When I realized that someone was on our property, I reached for my pistol and I put it in my belt.
Be careful.
I thought I was going to confront a robber, a burglar, someone who wanted to vandalize our stuff or steal something.
If it was only a burglar, the brothers might have been lucky.
I went right. My brother went left.
I went around the back of the house and up the side of the garden to the wood line. I walked to the edge of the woods, and I began to smell this odor. This creature was holding this dog in his hand, and the dog would whimper. And in this dog's eyes, you could see fear. It was fear. The thing turned and ran. I thought of my brother.
Frank.
It was coming toward him.
Frank! 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 It's coming toward you! I saw something.
It was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. I really didn't think we were going to make it out alive.
In the mountains of eastern Tennessee, generations have passed the story of a half-man, half-beast roaming the woods. They call it the Wildman. Some say the bipedal beast is a relative of Sasquatch, though it differs in key ways.
It's not as large as the Sasquatch. It is possibly even not as much hair, not as broad-shouldered, a little bit smaller in stature.
Some believe that the Wildman and Bigfoot may even be enemies, battling for remote territory in the Appalachian Mountains.
I believe the Tennessee Wildman is very territorial, and I believe that is very important in understanding why they get violent. They throw rocks, they yell, they scream, they shake trees. Yeah, I believe if they wanted to hurt someone, they really could.
One winter night in 1981, Mark Epperson and his brother Frank had gone outside to investigate a prowler. When the two split up, Mark found himself face to face with a mammoth he-monster.
It was covered with hair, it smelled, and it was very large. Very large.
Frank! 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 Frank!
I yelled at Frank and told Frank that I had something. It was coming toward him.
I saw something.
And I could hear something huge moving in the wooded area. So I realized that I'm going to meet this thing face to face, head on. So I raised my pistol, waiting for this guy to come through the woods. And I was ready to pull the trigger. The first thing that I saw was eyes. They looked like lights. They looked to me as if they had their own intensity. And I realized at that point that I was facing something that I had never imagined. This is a monster. It's hideous. It's almost waiting for me. You know, the thought came to me, does this thing know that I'm armed? Is it possible that he knows that, that he has an intelligence about him?
The creature glares at the two brothers. Then suddenly, what sounds like a war cry.
It let out a scream that would scare anyone, make anyone's hair stand up.
I knew then that this thing was coming. It was in my mind, shoot or don't shoot. Now is the time. He took a step to lunge toward me, and that's when I shot my pistol twice. And then he backs up and screams. It reminded me of a siren on an ambulance. It was screaming at me.
It's fear beyond belief. We felt very lucky and fortunate to be alive and uninjured.
What happened?
When Mark looked at me, he took me by the shoulders and he said, "This is the Tennessee Wildman." And I put it together then, that all these stories were true.
For me, the most frightening thing about a wild man is the unknown. We don't know what this thing's capable of. We don't know what its mindset is. A lot of people believe it is a friendly creature that lives in the woods, just wants to be left alone. But there are also those who believe this creature is very dangerous. We really don't know.
Over the years, Frank and Mark Epperson aren't the only ones to report a narrow escape from the Tennessee Wildman.
The only thing that I know at the time that I'm alone in these woods and there's something out here. I'm feeling the most ungodly fear.
In the southern Appalachian Mountains, tales of a wild man beast troubling these hills have circulated for decades.
The description concerning the Tennessee Wildman generally ranges from 7 to 9 foot, a mammoth-sized body, very strong, muscular build. The hair color ranges from a charcoal black to a reddish-orange tint with black. The big, large eyes, some people will say the fiery red. Is it a hybrid of some sort, a brand new species that we don't know? Whatever this is certainly something completely different.
They can be either a prehistoric man that has somehow survived throughout time without being discovered. We have the idea that they are indeed just another higher form of ape. We don't really know where these creatures come from. We don't know their origin.
But there's evidence about where they're living now and how they react when someone treads on their turf. 150 miles northeast of Rockwood, the Appalachian town of Johnson City, Tennessee brushes up against the Cherokee National Forest. Miles of streams twist and turn through these secluded hills and hollers.
This area would be a perfect breeding ground for creatures or monsters, in my opinion, just for the fact of the isolation. You don't have a whole lot of pockets of population. You have areas, miles and miles of woods and cliffs and caves. There's an unbelievable underground cave network here.
A perfect environment for a cryptic creature to hide.
The night that I went up to the cliffs and seen the Tennessee Wildman, it was the scariest night of my life.
I can still think about it today and get chill bumps.
Growing up, cousins Rob Phillips and Randy Sparks spent a lot of time outdoors, especially at the nearby Watauga Cliffs.
We always heard stories from different people that says they experienced things at the cliffs, but as many times as we've been up there, at this time, we've never experienced anything.
One Saturday night in 1997, the cousins were trying to decide how to spend the evening.
Hey, man, what do you want to do tonight?
I don't know.
You know what I was thinking? We go up to the cliffs, man, the cliffs.
When Randy mentioned going up to the cliffs, I was kind of hesitant about going up there because it was getting dark. It had been raining, it was wet, kind of muddy, and I wasn't real crazy about going up there.
Girls might be skinny dipping in the river down there.
It's gonna be muddy.
Oh, come on, you're scared of the cliffs? Ooh, the big scary cliffs. Yeah, girls, skinny dipping, let's go. All right. Let's go do it.
Randy managed to convince Rob, and soon the cousins were on foot, trekking deep into the forest.
I'm telling you, man, all you gotta do is go down there to the cliff, have a couple beers, and it's gonna be a good time. The girls are down there.
Of course, Randy was teasing about, the Tennessee Wildman up there, and he kept on, and I kept asking him to quit, and he just kept on teasing about it.
2 B's. You got beers and babes, man.
As he was joking, we heard this scream. It was a horrible sounding scream. It wasn't human, and it wasn't an animal. It was a very ear-piercing scream. The joking had stopped. We looked at each other in fear. We started hearing something heavy walking towards our direction, like it was coming at us. And we take off running. And we ran for a good minute or so before we realized that we're not with each other.
Now on his own, Rob would come to know firsthand how physically agile the wild man can be.
All of a sudden, I stopped hearing this movement on the ground, and now I'm hearing movement in the trees above me. And about 15, 20 foot in the air, there is this thing standing on a branch of the tree. And it's just standing there, looking towards me. I didn't think there was going to be any escaping this.
Swift on the ground, and a threat from the trees.
I was freaking out. I was fearing for my life.
In Tennessee on a cool September night in 1997, Rob Phillips and Randy Sparks were hanging out at a popular recreation spot, the Watauga Cliffs. Partying turned to terror when they heard the piercing screams of an abominable beast.
I took off like a bat out of hell. I took off, and I ran. I ran for my life.
The cousins had gotten safely back to their car, but still weren't free of the monster.
And at that point, I realized that I am looking directly at the Tennessee Wildman.
He's at least probably 9 feet tall. Great hairy hands. And there's no doubt in my mind that he could break the windows out of the car.
And Randy screaming, "Go, go, go!" I stopped the gas, and we left. We split, and we got the heck out of there. It was no longer a story. This legend of the Tennessee Wildman was real.
It is hard to fathom the existence of a half-human, half-beast. Only those who have looked into the eyes of the Tennessee Wildman know exactly what they've seen.
Whatever this thing is, it's me. I mean, it's if there is a definition for a monster, this is it.
Los Angeles, California. Most residents pay little attention to the ground underfoot. There's the vague and occasional terror of life in an earthquake fault zone. Yet some say a threat of an entirely different kind lurks under these streets. Supernatural, sinister, scaly.
From caves and sewers come the slime. The kill.
It sounds like a monster dreamed up in Hollywood. Yet reports of real reptoids continue to arise. Anaheim Hills is a planned community in the suburbs of Los Angeles. It's a safe, quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where people move to raise their kids. Yet underneath the manicured lawns, below the streets, some contend a nefarious neighbor is lurking.
Growing up, I had never heard of anything like a reptoid. I never heard of anything underground or living underground.
I never believed reptoids existed until that night, and definitely made a believer out of me.
Angelique McQueen lives in Anaheim. This busy, no-nonsense mom with 2 kids has built an unusual career for herself as a boxing manager.
My son loves boxing, and because it's such a shady kind of industry, I decided that if he was going to be involved in it, then I should know everything I can find out and be there for him and advise him in that, protect him.
Angelique never met a challenge she couldn't overcome. She wasn't the timid type. A night in November 2008 would change all that.
On November 27th, just like any other night, I decided to take my dog for a walk. It was a little chilly, and so I put on a heavier coat. As I was walking my dog, I got a very strange sensation that something wasn't right. It's one of those feelings that, danger. Like, maybe I shouldn't go this way. Maybe I should take a turn.
Only Angelique kept going, right into harm's way.
I look over down in the drain, I notice something. And I see 2 red eyes glowing, staring at me. It had a round head, glowing red eyes, a pit bull type of head. I couldn't make sense of what I was looking at. It's something I've never seen before. And before I could even think of anything, it pounced right in front of me. The fangs that I saw on this thing, it could have just devoured a person. It was a very evil, sinister, something that just nothing that I've ever felt.
This predator has ensnared Angelique in a telepathic trap.
The way it had control over my body and my mind was very, very scary. I was afraid, but I just stood there frozen. I couldn't move. I don't know how much time really passed.
Feeling she's about to meet her end, Angelique does the only thing she can. Run and try to hide.
I see a pickup truck. I jump in the back of it.
She's safe for the moment, but terrified the creature might find her. Angelique's boyfriend, Raj Jolly, was in their apartment upstairs.
I'm shaking, terribly shaking. I'm having a difficult time calling him. I finally get a hold of him.
Raj, you have to get down here now.
I tell him, Raj, run down here, hurry.
I could tell that she was terrified, she's really scared. And she said, get down here now. Grab a baseball bat or stick or something.
I'll be right there, okay?
I just grabbed anything I saw. I thought somebody was attacking her.
Back on the street, Angelique realizes the creature is closing in. And there's more than one.
I was panicked. I was scared to death. And I think any second it's gonna reach over into the truck and grab me. It's gonna take me. I felt like I was gonna die.
In Southern California, rumors about a lost race of lizard people, known as reptoids, living in colonies below the streets. Under cover of darkness, they emerge to hunt.
One theory for the reptoids is that they might be a surviving relic population of survivors from the Jurassic era, dinosaurs in other words, that over millions of years have shrunk in size, developed intelligence, and today we have what we call the reptoids. We do have evidence of animals believed to have become extinct that actually didn't become extinct. A classic example is the coelacanth, which is a large fish, an example of which was caught off the coast of South Africa in the 1930s. It was believed to have become extinct millions of years ago. With that in mind, I don't think it's impossible that other creatures from the Jurassic era might have survived as well.
Theories about the reptoid survival often target areas in Southern California, especially Los Angeles. In Anaheim, California, one November night in 2008, Angelique McQueen was walking her dog when she found herself face to face with lizard-like creatures emerging from the sewer drain.
They're coming up out of this drain, circling around like sharks. being right there was the most terrifying experience I've ever had in my whole life.
Just as the creatures were gathering force, Angelique's boyfriend ran straight into the middle of the encounter.
Are you okay?
They're these creatures that came from...
She was terrified. She was still shaking at what she had seen.
You stay right here.
I was pretty worried because Angelique's a pretty strong person, and she not normally nothing scares her.
Something about Raj stopped the reptoids. Almost instantly, they disappeared back into the drain. Are these creatures highly tuned to pheromones, attracted to some, taking flight from others?
I saw not one, but 2 or 3 different things that looked like little shadows kind of crawling. And as it stood up, it's a pretty big, scary-looking animal with big teeth.
We both heard the growl.
Like a weird growl, like a big animal. I just knew that I didn't want to mess with this thing anymore.
I knew that we had to get out of there, that it could come back up and it could kill us.
One night soon after, an awful sound outside the apartment awakes Angelique.
It was about 2:30 in the morning, and I heard a big thud against the wall. And I see this massive amount of tissue and blood dripping down the wall.
Was it the remnants of a reptoid victim? Angelique and her family would never know.
After that night, I decided I'm moving, I'm getting out of here. There was something very sinister, almost spiritual, evil. It's something that I did not want to be around any longer.
80 miles northeast of Anaheim, the town of Apple Valley, California rests at the foothills of the San Bernardino Mountains. Big skies, clean air, and low crime make it a desirable place to live. And yet, perhaps not so safe after all.
I never believed reptoids existed until I saw one for myself playing with my daughter.
In 1994, Lorena Smith was mother of 3 young children.
So what are you doing in your room?
Playing.
What are you playing?
With my toys.
Her small craft business allowed her to work at home and look after her youngest child. A child that Lorena thought had an overactive imagination.
My daughter had an invisible friend that she liked to play with and bring food to. And I would always make her extra food to take to her friend.
One day, Lorena's daughter had a special request for her invisible friend.
Do you like another sandwich?
And she came back and said, my friend's still hungry. Can you make a couple more?
Okay. It's ready.
And I made her a couple more and followed her to the room to find out where she was putting these sandwiches, because I knew she couldn't have eaten all of them. And I saw through the side door that she handed the sandwich to her friend in the closet.
Here you go. You want some more food?
And I saw a little hand reach out with little claws and reach out for the sandwich. I was in shock.
What is that?
Because I didn't know what it was.
Who are you talking to?
But I knew that something grabbed the sandwich. I didn't know what I was seeing.
Oh my God. Let's go, let's go.
My brain couldn't understand what was going on. You know, what did I see? I just wanted to run.
Southern California's sunny reputation might be at odds with a certain rumbling under the streets. But this is no earthquake story. Rather, there are claims of subterranean reptoids prowling through labyrinths underground.
Researchers of the reptoid phenomenon believe that there could be literally hundreds and hundreds of miles of these tunnels deep under California, specifically under LA, totally inaccessible to us. We don't really know what's going on under there.
In the 1930s, a mining engineer named W. Warren Shufelt was on the trail of a race of reptoids he was certain lived below LA. Shufelt even obtained permission from the city to pursue the search. his crew dug a number of 1,000-foot shafts that he hoped would reach a catacomb city filled with gold. After a few months of digging, the project was abandoned. No gold, no reptoids.
The reptoid phenomenon isn't a new one. We have reports dating back decades of these creatures attacking cars, attacking people, and interestingly enough, vanishing into things like culverts, drains, things like that, suggesting a connection between our world and their underworld.
In Apple Valley, California in 2004, Lorena Smith thought she was indulging her daughter's imagination when she made a sandwich for her make-believe friend. She's stunned to find herself confronting a creature that's all too real.
I walked into the room and my daughter was just sitting there watching it eat. I picked up my daughter because I was scared.
Who are you talking to?
And I looked to see what it was going to do or where it was going to go, and a hole, in the closet opened up.
Oh my God.
And it jumped right in, closed up, and it was gone.
Let's go, let's go.
I know that I was scared, not only for myself, but for my daughter, because she was playing with this thing, feeding it.
Lorena barricaded the closet and moved her daughters to her room. One night, while the kids were asleep, she heard something deep within the wall.
I finally realized that there were reptoids that were coming in and out of my house.
Lorena had pest control problems beyond all imagination.
Who do I call? And tell them what? I felt helpless, alone.
So she kept silent. Yet the next morning, someone had already found her.
Yes?
Good morning. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
May we come in?
Yeah, sure.
There was 3 military men at the door asking me questions on what I saw and did I tell anybody about what I saw. And when I asked them, what is it? They said it was something that escaped from their lab.
So it's very important you don't tell anybody.
What is it?
I'm not at liberty to tell you at this moment right now.
The visit from these military men left Lorena baffled. While some believe these creatures are remnant dinosaurs, another theory, far more sinister, claims they are extraterrestrials, hunting for breeding partners.
Most of the reports involving the reptilians are generally reported by women, and there's very often a sexual component to these stories. This has given rise to the whole idea of the creation of half-breed species and things like that.
A few nights later, something appeared again in Lorena's home.
I was in bed, and when I woke up, because I felt something, I felt the blankets moving.
This time, there was nothing shy about this large, wrathful reptilian.
It was 7 foot, 300 pounds, maybe more than that, and a rounded snout, yellow big eyes. I was terrified. I couldn't move, but I remember I was screaming because I was scared. I thought it was going to kill me. I could feel his nails as he was pulling me off the bed. When it pulled me by the legs, it had a horrible look in his eyes, and I knew what was coming. I knew what it was going to do. And it sprayed on me. And that spray stayed on. I don't know if it was like a pheromone, but I know it was a strong spray that I couldn't wash it out of my hair. I couldn't wash it out of my skin. And no matter what I used, tomato juice, but I know it sprayed. And I know it took enjoyment out of what it was doing. I knew it was some kind of reptile.
Then, Lorena's nightmare went from bad to worse.
What do you want?
And we're here about something you may or may not have seen.
He came back.
she was abducted to some sort of military facility. By all appearances, it's underground.
I just remember lying on a hospital bed. There was a man in a lab coat that was taking samples. I felt everything, but I was just in almost like a trance state, so I couldn't do really anything. But I saw them drawing blood, looking in my eyes, just like I was getting a full physical. They were doing all these things because I came in contact with a reptoid. And the last word I heard is one of the military men saying that it was just a dream and you won't remember any of it. How could you not? It makes me feel mad because they knew what was going on and they didn't help. 3 months after that, we finally had enough. We packed and we were gone.
Lorena left the reptoids behind, but the fear remains.
The scariest part of being in the presence of one of those creatures was not knowing what they were going to do to you or what their capabilities were. They are real. The government knows about it, but they do nothing. I think they were doing experiments, or one of their experiments got away, and it happened to be at my house. It's still as if it were yesterday. I was afraid that they might come back.